Welcome, everyone, to the Trailblazing Leaders podcast. It's my goal to bring to you insights and wisdom from some of the most exceptional leaders in business today. Leaders who have a track record of outstanding success, of driving business growth, from having a deep passion of attracting, developing, and retaining talent. And during each episode, my guests and I will explore and share our expertises and stories that cover a wide range of trailblazing leadership topics. We're going to talk about the philosophy of leadership, how they got into the role, lessons learned, the art of creating an organizational culture which attracts and develops and retains great talent, and what do they recommend for the up-and-coming trailblazing leader. Please stay with us to the end of today's podcast, where I'll be introducing and sharing with you how you can get a special leadership gift offer. I want to welcome to this episode of Trailblazing Leaders my very special guest, Mel Torrie. He is the founder, president, and CEO of Autonomous Solutions, Inc. They specialize in the design and manufacturing of unmanned vehicle systems for industrial, agricultural, automotive, and military applications. Founded in 2000 as a spin-off from the Center of Self-Organizing and Intelligent Systems, try to say that 5 times fast, it was a division of Utah State University. Mel and his company's mission is to provide OEM vendor independent automation technologies to create fully autonomous vehicles by retrofitting existing equipment. They have recently received their phase 2 funding for the deep learning of multi-sensor fusion development, and this funding is going to go ahead and support the advancement of integrating and interpreting data from multiple sensors to improve the autonomy and decision capabilities of unmanned vehicles. Mel is a basketball fanatic. He's a Utah guy, so he's a Jazz guy hanging in there. He's involved as the CEO of Good Times School of Rock and Jazz to help the youth develop their musical talents. Plus, he's a give back philanthropist to the chair of the Wayne Julian Foundation, which helps give new skills to allow people to lift themselves out of poverty. Mel, it is my absolute privilege to meet you and have you join us on this episode of Trailblazing Leaders. Let's just get right into it. We'll skip basketball for later. I'd like to talk about your leadership philosophy. And we'll get to your journey in a second, but what is your philosophy about building teams that are creating the innovations for the future? You are building our future. And what does it take to create a company that has that culture?
Yeah, it's a great question, especially with the evolution that has happened with the pandemic. And how do you do this? Because anyone can work in their basement for anyone on the planet and get paid incredible money. And so that is the question, trying to figure that out. And I don't have all the answers, but I can share some of the things that I've learned.
Thank you.
The first time I hit the wall really in my identity as a leader was when I read the Steve Jobs biography. And realized I cannot be like that. I can't rip people a new hole for not figuring out how to get the signal out of an aluminum case for the cell phone, or to make it 2 clicks to choose your favorite song, things like that. He really beat on people and found a way to get the alignment towards simple that could truly revolutionize those industries. And really got depressed about it. It's like, why have I been fortunate? Why do I feel like the Lord helped me get into this situation where I've got this company and I can't be that? And I need to do what he did, which was simplify some, like you read that description of what we do, the AI, machine learning, all these sensors, computers, radios, GPS. It's crazy, tough stuff.
It's complex. Just the discussion
Yeah.
of it. I know you're dealing in high complexity, high technology stuff.
Yeah. And then how do I make it such that a lady in Africa who was driving a mining truck can now set up, supervise, and service this kind of equipment with low education, or a migrant farmer who is servicing an orchard tractor that's spraying dangerous chemicals. How do we simplify this and make it working and make it reliable? And felt insecure about whether I should really be the leader, and do I need to hire a tough guy to be that enforcer to really push engineers to do the things they don't think they can. And ultimately came to the eureka that, and it got biblical in the David and Goliath, that I was trying to put on the armor of Steve Jobs, and I'm a slingshot guy. So stop that. And then I asked the question, how do I create a culture where I can thrive? And it's sad it took me 16 years to get there, but it is a humble, psychologically safe environment where that person comes to me and said, hey, here's my engineering baby. How can I make it look better? And it is not a hard conversation to tell someone their baby's ugly when they come and ask how to make it look better. What can you do to this? What can you do with my product? How can you improve it? And then I've never had a tough conversation with a humble person, and I can tell them anything. And so it became, holy cow, this is the answer. I need a humble team. I need a leader that will listen to everybody's ideas. I need an engineer who will humbly bring his design to you and ask for input. And if you get that, what was exciting to me is you should be able to kick butt on every other kind, where you're yelling and screaming, you're not smart enough, you better do this or you're fired, compared to both of them humble and bringing their best ideas to the table and getting on board with what I call the second best decision, because it wasn't mine. If that engineer believes that he had the best design, but can he get on board with the second best decision like it was his own? That's PhD level humble. And and then you should be able to produce far more. And so the biggest challenge then became, okay, I'm excited about it, but now I've got a team that I've built without that knowledge. I've interviewed, I've hired, and it is the only trait by its definition that the lack of it rejects influence. Pride rejects influence of changing that personality trait. So
wow, great
that
line.
was such a fun irony that I finally identified it. It should be optimal compared to any other trait value to promote in a company. And then the lack of it by definition is the hardest thing to transform in a person. So that's where I was in 2016. And then it's just been on this quest to figure out how to define it. Because humble to some people is meek and you're just going to be walked over, and miss the point of the value of humble. And then how do you reinforce it? How do you hire for it? How do you reward it? How do you filter out and reject those who aren't? And that's been quite a journey.
So I'd love to talk about that journey, because you hit upon so many aspects. One is, so you came upon a vision of a thought. Humble is the key to innovation, collaboration. If we could set aside our pride and allow everyone to speak and then listen without pride of ownership, we can come up with great ideas. Yeah. Now you had to filter through a team you already built without that. Yeah. So could we go through that journey you just described? What did you do with your existing team? Then how did you start to hire for brilliance and humility, humbleness?
Yes,
how has that transition gone on?
So the first thing was getting it defined. And I guess that's been an ongoing. How do you truly clarify what it looks like, what it doesn't look like? And so just putting a lot of time into that and getting feedback and going, holy cow, that's what they think. I was way off. Examples and just reteach. And then figuring out how to measure, and then iterated on the questions to ask in anonymous surveys to the people about their leadership. And so that 180 kind of perspective on, you're interacting with this leader. Here are the 3 questions. Does he listen to your ideas and accept them? Or does he have good balance in listening and valuing what you say? Do you feel valued even when your idea wasn't accepted? So wrapping some questions that will best help us define and help those leaders understand what we value, and then do those anonymous surveys. And some just hated it. Some of the leaders were furious. Like, you need to stop doing it anonymous. I need to know who said that about me, because I'm going to take care of this. Just furious. And our 3 lowest scores left the building within 6 months.
Yeah. So that I was going to say is, did they find their way out the door knowing this is not my home anymore?
Yeah.
Or did you have to provide a little bit of encouragement to find a new home, or a combination?
On my leadership team, I would say over time, there have been conversations to help people find a place that they would thrive without that trait. But the initial response of people leaving was very fast. Once we put those surveys in place, just the fury of, I'm being evaluated on a trait that I am not a rock star in, and I can't go and get them. I can't go and force them to get in alignment with my view of myself.
And what's so interesting is, Gallup teaches all leaders that anonymous feedback survey of the 12 core needs is the single not biggest driver of engagement. So here you had anonymous survey of 3 questions that help, again, drive to the vision you wanted, the behaviors you wanted, the culture you wanted, and people opted out. How often did you implement those surveys?
We did it quarterly. Some people felt I was doing it too often, but it's amazing, because there are 2 things that help in what they call hard conversations, crucial conversations, that I have found that if you have it, then it's not a hard conversation. One was humble, I mentioned. The other is having data. And so I had the most amazing conversations that should be terribly awkward, where, one example, a guy said, "Hey, my team's doing great." And then I pull up his anonymous survey and I said, "This person sounds like they're about to leave, and this is what they think about you and their journey." And then I was on the same side of the table, helping him figure out and come up with a plan. And so, man, there is nothing you can't do if you have a humble team and you have data to help inform. There are no conversations that are hard at that point, I have found.
Understand. Let's cover one more on this aspect, which is, when you're a leader of a team and a manager of people, you might be a brilliant PhD, but you might not be a people person. How do you find both? Or did you find, I had to give up some of the intellectual knowledge to find more inspirational team leaders that would have the team do the job versus the leader be responsible for the brilliance?
A wonderful debate that's raged in industry. I think the Google study on the psychological safety really brought forward that those leaders and those teams that had psychological safety were truly outperforming those that had the PhDs. And so I think that's one dimension, is you will outperform because you have the brains of 7 people that are bringing their best ideas. You get the best idea out of that room versus the best individual. And the other side of that is that my CEO coach back in that same time period said, you've got to have 3 different kinds of people: make it up, make it real, make it repeatable.
Make it
to
up.
really build a great product company.
Yeah.
And so you have some PhDs, you have some negative people that make incredible quality engineers or safety engineers. You have to have that pessimist in the room who's seeing the sky falling and knows where the gaps are likely to happen. And so that's why it's so vital that you have a humble leader and a humble team, so that you don't reject those people and kick them out of the room. You have to hear their voices, or you're just not going to have a safe solution. But you've got to have them have that willingness to get on board with that decision and bring their critique up the next time and the next time, even though at some point you shipped it, you flew that plane, even though the safety engineers felt like it should never leave the ground. and then that humble again. So I really say it's not optional, and I think the studies show that it is a better way to go.
So Patrick Lencioni on his 5 dysfunctions of a team, or the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team, he talks about trust, vulnerability-based trust. So that's a version of humility. Yeah. He talks about productive conflict and discussion, and then everybody gets a chance to weigh in, and then someone makes a decision and they're all bought in. And then finally, you have this aspect of self-accountability. I would like to cover that. And we're focused on result of a team.
Yes.
It feels like humbleness kind of encompasses the ability to make all that happen. If someone is not humble, then you don't have the trust, the safety. Is that what you have discovered?
Yes. And it was fun to see that he came out with a book later that the ideal team player is humble, hungry, smart. It was just such a cool convergence or distillation that he's gone through to get to that. Like, those are the 3 traits. You get people that are people smart. It wasn't just technology smart, but people smart, humble and hungry, and you've got an unstoppable team. And that was just a fun, simplified definition of who you should be hiring, and such a cool validation of what we had discovered. And I love that accountability side of that, if you want to go into that.
Yes, I do, because I think it's one thing to say is the team self-regulates. I'm in a discussion with an organization where how does the team self-regulate and hold themselves accountable versus the manager managing the task, the doer. Oh, did you get it done? I'm on top of it. Because I think we're looking for now what we call the human manager, not the task manager. So I'd love to talk about self-accountability.
You know all my buttons, man. We have the world's largest rollout of autonomous vehicles in a mine down in Australia right now. And as you think about that, each of the vehicles are autonomous, and yet you accomplish the goal. It's $1 million an hour kind of mine site. So they really want it to work. But you have these autonomous vehicles, and yet you have a common goal across all of those to move the iron ore at $1 million an hour through that. And it's the same way with an organization. Robert Greenleaf, it's just so fun because our company name is Autonomous Solutions, that a servant leader is one who helps people become autonomous. That is your role as a leader, is to help them. And he referred to healthier, wiser, more autonomous, more likely to become leaders themselves, servant leaders. And this was back in the late 60s. That he defined leadership as helping people become autonomous. And so how do we do that with a mining truck? We provide closed loop feedback so that truck knows, I need to be on this road. I need to have this steering angle. And then we have sensors that provide that feedback. And then we have exception handling if the sensor failed and it goes off the road. And we know we have to have that sensor feedback every 100 milliseconds or it's not enough. And so we have this quest at our company to help our people become autonomous. And we do that by providing the feedback measures. So what are those key indicators that they can self-regulate? And then what are the mechanisms for determining when those are out of bounds so that the leader can come in and do the exception handling? We went off the road, our steering sensor is broken, and our steering, that leader is no longer humble. They lost it in that stressful situation. And do I have the mechanisms so that he's self-regulating, he loses it? How does that escalate so that we can do an exception handling and reteach and coach? And so it's getting those right feedback measures and then having the kinds of interactions to make sure that it's at the right interval so that you can make sure that the vehicle doesn't leave the road. And so we apply the autonomy of the robots and help our people become more autonomous.
So I'm going to ask for a hypothetical.
Yeah.
We have engagement in the United States workforce at consistently stuck around 30%, 33, 35. It never moves. Yeah. We know the direct manager is the single most important influence besides compensation on their engagement.
Yeah.
What's keeping companies from breaking through? There's 100 best companies that break through and have high engagements. What do you think is happening at the leadership level and all the executives? Why is this so hard? It feels like it should be so easy.
Yeah. You know all my buttons, man.
But this is what I've been pondering, having run a
Yeah.
business for 40 years. And I know my own personal journey of what it took and my resolution. And
Yeah.
now I ask myself, I want to challenge leaders. It's not hard. It's all out there. The facts are there. The data's there. The method is there. So why is it still so hard?
I'll share some thoughts on what we're doing. I think the biggest problem, I would say, is twofold. One is the humble side. So if you've got a leader, like, humble is so bloody hard. When you have the authority to tell someone to do something, and yet you're going to take the time to explain the why, to listen to their not relevant whining and pushback that this isn't the right way, and then help them and reteach instead of forcing it because you can. And that is hard. And
Yeah.
so that's huge. So that's one biggie. The other is we have a misalignment on priorities, and it ties to financials. And so there are very few in the world that everyone talks the talk. I've had partners, I've had investors who say, yes, people are most important, and yet they only give equity to the senior leaders. They will lay off people to satisfy the stock market when they have the cash in the bank. I met with one company. I went and spoke at one of these big robot companies, and they were laying off 50 people that week, and they had 100 million in the bank. I'm like, how? And, oh, well, if we use our own money, our ratios will invert. Boeing will buy us and move us to Georgia. And dumping people who helped them get where they're at. And another company I've partnered with, pandemic hits. Oh, we're going to keep our margin at 20%. We're laying off 300 people right now. Now, those are all wise decisions if your priority is the short-term quarterly earnings and keeping your stock price up. Do you want that stock price up for 20 years? Do you want your people engaged versus they laid off my buddy for a stock price and I know what our bank balance is? And when am I next? I know I'm a pawn to balance the books, as Simon Sinek would say. And that is darn hard because I'm on the board of a public company right now. I get how important that stock price is to their success, their capitalization. And so that's the misalignment, is you've got the stockholder as number one, then you've got the customer, then you've got the senior executives, and then you have your people. You cannot get engagement unless you get that inverted.
Yeah.
You can't.
You can't.
They know it, they see it, and with transparency to public records, they know I am a pawn to balance the books so that stock price can stay up. And you just won't get it. So if you get a humble team, a humble leader, if you show by your actions, not just something you publicize and put on a slide deck, that when tough decisions come, I choose my people, that's when you get the engagement.
So it feels like the word we haven't talked about here is courage and ability to take the heat for the long term.
Yes.
Because an organization that is people-centric becomes a talent magnet. And so if you are a talent magnet, as you say, I'm attracting the people I want. In your case, I want humble, smart, brilliant people. And you've weathered the tough by making yourself, my people do come first before my profit. It does steamroll. The research shows there is this compounding effect. But boy, oh boy, I think it's very hard for leaders to have the courage to take the heat and or not be able to put themselves first. Because I think a lot of it is giving up of yourself and your own personal reward on behalf of families, communities, bigger than you.
It's so hard.
So hard.
And there's really a time frame component. So it's that prioritization, but it's also the time. And I love Simon Sinek's point of infinite gain versus finite, that this quarterly earnings, the CEO in a public company is going to be there for 3 to 4 years or something. That is not the horizon where these kind of fruits will bear. true multiplication. And so that takes faith that you are going to attract, you are going to retain, and that loyalty, that brain share is going to continue to build versus that turnover you see in Silicon Valley of that 1 to 3 years. We have 20-year people that are still putting in incredible effort and sacrifice to help be successful. Like one example, a guy, he's working for his church, very faithful guy who loves his church, very passionate about what he was doing to help them. And he saw a video I did explaining these things. And he said, I am going to work for that guy. And so he left and is the most crazy evangelist of our culture, not his church, but just amazing advocate that I don't worry about retention or anyone throwing 3x the money at him that he could get in Silicon Valley because he wants to be in that kind of an organization that values him and listens to him and wants to make a difference.
It feels like we're actually having the new generation of workforce values more than money. I value my work-life balance. I value being heard. I value being respected. I value not being the pawn. And so the companies that might be using the manufacturing, you're just a cog in the wheel of 20 years ago, might not gain the competitive advantages as they're taking these short-term profit decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, and they won't say they're cogs in the wheel, but those tough decisions that take courage, that's where they feel it. And because you see it, there were big layoffs this week from some billion-dollar companies who have the cash, period. Do you have the courage to withstand the public scrutiny, to put your people first and have that long view that it's truly going to turn out better for those shareholders?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the hard part is marketing the magnetism of great value that a company represents, and that becomes the talent attractor, right? I read HR people are struggling with attracting great talent. Well, if the manager or the organization doesn't have a culture of why should I come, how are they possibly going to attract? It becomes this vicious circle they put themselves in.
Yeah, and a lot of it, as we look at startup through scale, can you take money that's aligned with your plan, with your values? And that's brutal because there is not very much. We did the bootstrapping approach. It's been bloody, painful. We've faced near death 3 times, but we just felt like if we put our people first and just did our best, that it would all work out, and it has. But you look at venture capital, they're pushing to a 3 to 5 year exit, and we don't care who that highest bidder is. We're moving those people if it's an acquisition, if it's to the public market. And so that's funding our technology, is that venture capital money, and then private equity through the scale. They're going to sell to the highest bidder. Yeah. There is no alignment with this priority of people first. And there are some who say it, and I bet there are a few who do walk the talk, but that is the fundamental challenge in my journey, is the source of the money I need to innovate is not aligned with putting people first.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to talk on two things as we go forward. One is, you talked about the bloody battles of the startup, 3 battles. I suspect there's important lessons there. Maybe you could summarize whether it was the mental success, the faith success. How did you get through those battles? Let's talk about that.
Ooh. This is like that trauma you're not supposed to go back and relive.
I'm sorry. I just know there's wisdom in there, Mel. I'm just going to try to extract a little bit of wisdom.
Yeah, and I do think it comes back to people first.
Okay.
That I guess what I feel, call it the universe or faith in God, but that your values are going to be tested to their breaking point, and that your courage is going to be tested. And as you think about just how we strengthen ourselves in the weight room, resistance is how we build strength. And the toughest push-up that rips your muscle the most builds the greatest strength.
Yeah, great.
And so I had one experience. My CFO, who happened to be my wife at the time, said to my senior leaders, bring your list of layoffs to the meeting. We're going to meet with Mel and figure out what to do because we have 2 weeks of money left. And if this deal doesn't come through, then we won't have the severance pay. We need to lay off. So bring your names and we're going to go meet with Mel. And so they all went around the room and listed all their names of people they're going to lay off. And I said, I appreciate the work you've done, but we're not going to lay anybody off. This deal is going to come through. And just furious. And one person said, are we really going to let him do this? We're headed to a brick wall at 60 miles an hour. And everyone got quiet, and then they all walked out of the room. And that person told their son about that meeting. And that person went to school and told his other employee friends, sons, what had happened and how I put them above the inevitable crash into a wall and my personal finances, my house and everything that was tied into financing the business over dropping those people to hit those financial targets that we had to hit to keep everybody. And so that's an example where I had to have faith in that if God loves me more than even my mom, then this is going to happen. And if it doesn't, then that's what I was supposed to learn. But that I'm going to bet on the people, I'm going to put them first. And those people that are still here are more engaged and have more knowledge and all of those experiences and all of that confidence that I will never compromise them and their value to the organization. That's power. That's why we're building a very strong, disrupting company.
So you can see it. Your character through the tough times, through the fright, has sent a signal to allow you to get through that incredible tough time, however it came through. And of course, the people are so appreciative. You're getting what everyone wants: high engagement, high passion, high contribution, high respect under the guidelines of humility, honesty, openness, psychological safety. So I commend you in the courage that it takes. It's hard to be an entrepreneur and it's hard to face these really tough times. So I just, as a one to another, I have the highest respect.
You're kind. I would say, as you think about the three types of people, make it up, make it real, make it repeatable. It is because I'm a naive optimist. I have people that are freaking out and panicking to make sure, and they balance me out. So let's be clear that I just believe it's going to turn out and act that way. But you need everybody's voice in the room. And I'm the optimist, and I should never design the safety system on a mining truck. So.
Okay. So let's close with two thoughts. One is there's a lot of fear about autonomous everything, and artificial intelligence, machine learning, manufacturing equipment. People aren't going to be working anymore. Society will degrade to nothing. You sit at the hub of that. What would you say to people to help calm their fears and help give them some perspective because they have a hard time seeing hard time horizons?
There's no question there's going to be a major transformation. As you look at the internet and the panic there, or the panic back in the horse industry when the automobiles came, there was always a creation of more jobs in all of those patterns. So as we look back on history, it has gotten better. But there were definitely the horsewhip people definitely had to retool. All of the companies that we're working with have committed not to lay people off and to retool. And so those mining truck drivers are now being trained to run the software from 800 miles away instead of having to fly away from their families for 2 weeks and live in a camp. They're running from an office with air conditioning, and their lives are better. They're smarter, they're paid more. The bottom line, if you look at the job-seeking restaurants and farmers and miners and construction industries, they cannot find the people that are willing to do the work. In Japan, we had a major construction company come and say the average operator of wheel loaders, it's a construction vehicle, in Japan is 70 years old. The young adults will not sit in a vehicle and do brainless work all day. And so our mission of helping you reach your potential, we want to get you out of those mind-numbing and dull and dangerous jobs and into those more fulfilling, creative, using your mind and bringing more value and expanding your capabilities. So the work that we're getting is from people who are panicking about not being able to do their farming, do their construction, and they don't have the options of people to do it, and they can't get them in from other countries.
Are you one of the few companies or only company that's taking existing equipment and making autonomous? Because that's a very unique piece I don't want to overlook, that I'm taking stuff and now making it autonomous.
Yeah, so the OEMs that make new equipment, they make most of their margin on big mining truck. I make 40-50% margin on selling that big mining truck. They're not very excited about automating old ones. They want to sell the new ones. And so it doesn't help them. It hurts them that people don't need to buy the new trucks to get the new technology. So I would say we're not popular that way, and that all of the OEM's money is typically towards the new stuff and not to help convert old equipment. But there are some other companies in ag, not many that I know of in construction and mining. But what's exciting is, especially like mining trucks that can last 20 years, they get to keep that investment. They keep to, like, some are parking the trucks because they can't find drivers. So now they can use that equipment, and now we can run it from anywhere in the world. So we're running the world's largest deployment of autonomy from 800 miles away, and people can be in an office. Now I can run that from Guatemala. I went and did tests down in Guatemala where we could run a golf course mower here from a cell phone in Guatemala City. In Utah, we've run equipment in Australia from Utah through Starlink and through the new technology with the satellite communications. Now we can take that labor that can't find work in Central South America and Africa and run the construction sites we don't have the bodies to operate here in the US.
It's a better, what I'm hearing is a better world, a world where people didn't have jobs to have jobs, and people doing more creative work than, as we say, mind-numbing work of the industrial era, which is what a gift you're bringing to the world. Oh, and the courage for you to go through the hard times to have these breakthroughs, and basically the recycling of the old so we don't have to buy the new. That's, again, another gift to the world.
Well, you're saying a lot of positive things. We have lots to learn. We haven't figured it out. We're still trying to figure out how to find money that isn't poisoned with the misalignment of putting people at the bottom. And that's really what limits our ability to scale. And so we are scouring the world for that kind of aligned capital to succeed. And I haven't figured that out. And we've been fortunate to be scaling as we are and working with some of the world's largest end users to automate and help their operations improve. And we're still on that quest.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm going to close on one question, and we'll come off, and I'd like to talk about that money for a second, which is to up-and-coming leaders who are trying to blaze a trail. If you've shared a lot of your leadership philosophies about humility and humbleness and teamwork, but if you had some guidance, just, like you gave in your commencement speech, if you had 3 points that you want to leave of the leaders of the future, what would you say to them?
I would say, don't just say your people are your greatest assets. Have the courage to back that up with the tough decisions. Bet on them. There are a lot of bets that you're making, and always bet on your people. And that will shine through and you will succeed. That would be one. The other is to figure out what your slingshot is. And who was it that? I think it was that same CEO coach said that confidence is your greatest asset. And what if you don't understand that you have make it real, make it repeatable people on your team that are going to eye roll when you talk about the vision and the grand things you're going to achieve? You're going to get very insecure that, hey, I'm not you. And so you got to figure out what your slingshot is, what culture really fits you, and be great with that. Do not go through that depression I did with trying to be a Steve Jobs that you're not. Forget his armor, figure out your slingshot, and that will make you far more effective than the Steve Jobs, both in his approach, but also in trying to be someone else.
Yeah.
So that would be number 2.
Yeah. Okay.
And then number 3, when you see these tests of your values, remember that the greatest strength is gained in the muscle ripping of those trials. And because that management of your emotional journey is tough. You can see why people go to drinking, go to, or just quit, because it's darn hard. But if you truly believe that life is orchestrated for helping you gain the greatest muscle that you're going to need for even greater things you're going to accomplish in the future, then you can embrace those challenges and you can put your effort into that push-up knowing that it is going to build the muscle you need for even greater miracles and good things that you can do for the world. It can help you get through and have that positive attitude and believe that it's worth it.
That's fantastic. I appreciate those 3 points. And in a similar vein, this word faith, and while you and I might have different gods, the faith that we are there to help bring out the magnificence in each other, to help every human flourish. And when we come from a place of caring and loving and servitude and bringing out the best of another, allows the world and ourselves and our colleagues to all be better. Why wouldn't you want to have that type of company? And I really liked your point about don't try to be somebody else. Know yourself, accept your strengths, accept your weaknesses, just be your authentic, learn from others, but don't try to act like a Steve. You don't have to. There's many ways to succeed.
Love it.
So, Mel, I thank you so much for your time. I thank you so much for your wisdom and your philosophies and being here. I want to remind you to please stay to the end of today's podcast summary, and I will let you know of how you can receive a special leadership gift from us today. Now, today's episode with Mel Torrie really covered critical topics for all trailblazing leaders. The single most important topic was walk the talk and have faith in your people. You must invest in your people and provide a place that is psychologically safe and, most importantly, open and trusting to help them contribute to the success of the organization. And with that, Mel explained the importance of humility and humbleness, not only of the team and everybody on the team, but starting with the leader. Because without having a humbleness to listen to other people's ideas, to being able to recognize that there's many ways to get to a solution and that you might not be the brightest person in the room, but together, 6 brains, 8 brains, 10 brains can accomplish anything, that you can achieve great success. So this point of people first with authenticity and humility is a key point that we've covered in today's episode. The other point that Mel really touched on, and I think proves the point, of anonymous feedback at appropriate intervals. Another point Mel hit upon, which was the importance of frequent and regular anonymous feedback. Now, Gallup has reported that frequent anonymous feedback is crucial to help a manager or a leader of people understand how well they're doing. And in his business, his autonomous vehicles provide feedback in 100 millisecond cycles about whether they're on track or not. But what Mel talked about was when he was able to provide anonymous surveys of just 3 questions about each manager. in terms of, are they listening to me? Are they valuing my ideas? Are they honoring my contribution? Am I being part of the team? That those leaders that didn't meet the culture that he was trying to build of humility and psychological safety and trust found their way to a natural exit. And so this aspect of implementing frequent rapid survey is so crucial to creating what I call magnificent managers. And the last piece that Mel talked about was knowing yourself. Don't try to be someone else. As he talked about, he tried to be Steve Jobs and yell at people. You got to know your authenticity. You got to know your strength. You got to know your values. You got to know your beliefs, and just be that. And if you go with that and a people-centric heart, and you put people before profit, and you have the courage of your convictions and your beliefs, and be able to get through the dark times, because in leading any business, whether it's a public company or private company, we have highs and lows, but putting our people first and investing in our people, the data shows time and time again, the returns are significant. And that investment starts not only in your senior leaders, but it translates all the way down to your managers and the managers of the managers. So investing in magnificent managers, investing in all your people is really the key to long-term success. So I thank you for being at this episode of Trailblazing Leaders and listening to Mel and his comment. And again, if you would like to receive our very special brand new e-guide on the Magnificent Manager Talent Advantage, it is available at the Kern website. Just go there. It's going to be promoted right on the homepage at kernandpartners.com. And download it. It is full of rich content that will help you understand what are the 3 areas of focus to create magnificent managers who care about people, and what are the 12 behaviors that managers need to practice to show that they are people-first leaders. People leaders who are committed to looking for the magnificence of everyone and helping everyone in the organization flourish to the largest potential and human potential that's possible. Thanks for being with us. Please subscribe, and I look forward to having you come with us at next week's episode.